This is a pretty hot mic, so I'm gonna put this. This is a pretty hot mic, so I'm gonna put this.
Recording in progress.
It echoes.
Already.
Recording in progress.
It echoes.
Why are we getting it?
Yeah, we're getting an echo. I don't know what's going on there.
Why are we getting it?
Yeah, we're getting an echo. I don't know what's going on there.
The echo?
Let me see. Let me see.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't have a meeting where after 5 seconds, I hear myself talk again. Can't have a meeting where after 5 seconds, I hear myself talk again. Yeah. Definitely don't want to hear myself talk. Yeah. Definitely don't want to hear myself talk.
Oh, yeah.
It's still going.
Play or something. What's play or something.
Yeah, can we turn
It's
this off?
normally in.
Yeah, can we turn
It's
this off?
normally in.
Or maybe is it, maybe is it?
Yeah, there it is.
Still hearing it. Is it Samantha's, still hearing it? Samantha's, okay, let's try that. Better? Okay, let's try that. Want to just continue and try to ignore it? Okay, I'll call to order the, what is it, February 25th Communications Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Chairman Gould,
Here.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes, here.
All members are present. Chairman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes, here.
All members are present. Chairman Gould.
So, we haven't had a meeting for a little bit. We haven't had a meeting for a little bit. Sounds like we need to have more meetings.
Way to,
We need to have more meetings.
way to.
Ours are all on. Ours are all on.
Like hand it to us and hand it between us. Like hand it to us and hand it.
Have someone on that's speaking to us through Zoom tonight.
I feel like I'm at a wedding or something. I feel like I'm at a wedding or something.
Did you mute her? Because she can't hear us anymore.
Yeah, but now
She
Samantha
needs to be
can't.
able to hear us.
Samantha needs to be able to hear us, the Zoom lady.
Did you unmute the Zoom?
Now I can hear.
Great.
Okay, that's good.
Now I can hear.
Okay. But we have an echo in here for whatever reason.
So I can see
But we
two
have an echo
accounts
in here for whatever reason.
that are online besides me. One is Chambers AV and one is City of Brentwood. I don't know if that's the cause of your echo.
That is normal.
That's normal.
I don't know if that's the cause of your echo.
Yeah, it's set up the same as every other meeting. We've never had. Yeah, it's set up the same as every other meeting. We've never had. Yeah, it's set up the same as every other meeting.
Can you hear it now?
Yes.
Is that echoing?
Yes. I don't hear an echo at all. Do you?
Is that echoing? Yeah.
We do.
I don't hear an echo at all. Do you?
We do.
Oh.
Every one of your mic, or every one of your computers is on sound off, right?
Not even on the Zoom.
I'm on Zoom, but my audio is off. I'm on Zoom, but my audio is off.
Always the communications committee meeting,
Oh, right.
ironically. Always the communications committee
Oh,
meeting,
right.
ironically. Okay, well, I guess we'll just continue to proceed and try to do as best we can. I know it's been a while, so I don't have a significant report, other than I'm excited to get a chance to hear from Rafelis about the audit that was done and to find out the next steps, so. City administrator report, there is none listed, so I'm assuming forward with the department report, so.
Hopefully you all were able to see the year-end report that was put into. Hopefully you all were able to see the year-end report that was put into.
I just keep going, don't worry about it.
So
But then he may not be able to.
I just
I
keep going,
moved
don't
to
worry.
a different. So
But then he may not be able to.
ask that you like to see the graphs. So I kind of utilized our online scheduling platform that we use throughout social. They create platform that we use throughout social graphs. So I included those for the full year of 2024 to today, or to right now, the month to date, and then the year to date, to be able to kind of get a fuller picture of what we're looking at in terms of overall we've seen we saw some incredible growth last week. We saw a 200% increase in link. I think that has to do with the winter storm. You're posting a great deal. We had the board meeting. You're posting a great deal. We had the board post. So I think that, we have the winter storms to thank for kind of that, have the winter storms to thank for kind of snowplows, plowing schedules, refuse schedules, any changes occurring to snowplows. So, but overall, I'm very happy with where we're at in terms of our social media numbers. Like I said,
Turn your mic on, I guess, or.
Yeah, so I looked at the reports. I think they're great. I'm not sure whether I understand them as well as I should, and so I was just gonna ask, the series of waves that you see, those are the size of an audience. Those are at a certain point or on a certain day?
that's the level of growth.
At a certain point or on a certain day? But if it says, like, for instance, February 11th, it looked like our Facebook audience was up to 4. It looked like our Facebook audience was up to 4. Oh, I see. Okay. And the peaks that fall below the line means we lost a person. Fall below the line means we lost a person. Okay. So if you see a peak at 4 on February 11th, and then you see another peak at roughly 3 on February 16th, does that mean we have 7? So it does build. it's not, because when I saw these waves, I thought, well, we're gaining and losing ground all the time. Because when I saw these waves, I thought, well, okay. We're gaining and losing ground all the time. Okay.
followers and peaks and ebbs and flows of followers. Peaks and ebbs and flows of followers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is good. I appreciate seeing the full picture of this. I do like your other reports as well, just so, I didn't want you to get the wrong idea that your other report wasn't good enough. So anyway, I'm happy to continue either in this method or with you, providing this as a support, but to give us a synopsis or a narrative of it. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. The concern I have, and we'll get into this probably when we start looking at the audit, that I've always had is so much of what we do on our official sites gets shared to unofficial sites. And then a lot of dialogue and engagement happens in those unofficial sites, and that never gets back to us. And I don't know how to reconcile that or how to even promote that. People should be engaging with the city on their official channels. I mean, if you look at the community page, they've almost got 5,000 followers when we've got, half of that.
Challenge. That is actually something that I noticed. Challenge. That is actually something that I noticed. Our post, the organic post on the city of Brentwood page, our post, but then it was shared to they commented there.
Yeah.
So that's gonna take some.
I don't know that that's unusual.
I don't think it
I,
is.
I see it because I'm on other posts because I don't live in town. And sometimes they're really great conversation that they have. Sometimes they're nasty conversation. And if you've looked at our Facebook page, it mirrors that. So not that we want that, on our Facebook page, but I don't know how you tell them
No, I mean,
to bring that to the city's website or the city's social media platform and engage with us in that manner when they're talking amongst themselves.
yeah, I don't necessarily want like a bunch of debate and talking amongst themselves, but when it's about communicating city or asking the city, it would be best if it's direct. Yes, but it would be best if it's direct. And I guess I'm curious. Yeah, and I don't know if other cities have the same issue, or if there are other communities that don't have organic, non-official pages, and they see more engagement on their official websites, on their official channels.
And so guessing at what they're thinking, but our page is public. So people outside of Brentwood, our page is public. So people outside of that's something that we're never going to get away from because that's why they take that conversation away from. That's why they Brentwood community. So they're not going to get outside comment. Not going to get outside comment.
But I think when we're asking for engagement, citizen engagement, community engagement, then it gets shared to another site that then we don't capture that engagement. That's where it gets to be challenging, and I'd love to just hear strategies and maybe Rafaela can provide us with some things. I think those are the issues I've always had with. Yep, right.
I would like to say that while sometimes I do find it disappointing.
Yep, right.
I'm trying to reframe it in my mind as not disappointing. I'm trying to this post that we have created, and to a certain this post that we have created, I tried to look at it beyond the numbers.
Right.
Because I tried to look at it beyond the numbers.
Right.
Are the primary audience for these posts? Are the primary audience?
I agree with that. I agree with that.
So using an analogy from like 75 years ago or 100 years ago, it's almost like our website is sort of like the library, and they'll take the piece of information from the library and bring it back home and say, hey, look at this, what's going on? They're not necessarily going to engage the librarian or anybody that might be in the library at the time about this, but they really want to tell their friends and neighbors.
Does make me interested, and I might. What their kind of take on this type of thing.
Yeah.
Because like Paula said, what their kind of take on this.
Yeah.
That don't have an official page. I would be interested to see what has an official page. So
And if it even matters, when you start to look at analytics and metrics and I guess sort of a KPI of what, from a communications KPI, of what, especially in social media, you know, does that matter? So, especially in social media, you know, does that matter? So, yep, okay, good. Anything else on analytics? Okay, good. Anything else on analytics? Next is the consent agenda, which just has the meeting, the minutes from our November 19th meeting. Can't believe it was that long. Any issues with it?
None whatsoever. I'd make a motion and a second that we adopt the meeting. I'd make a motion and a second.
All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
All right, since we don't have a resident on the committee yet. So we'll go on to old business. That's update on the communications audit and plan. Are you going to give a update on the communications audit and plan?
Raftellus has completed the communications audit of this process. So we have included and then we've invited Samantha Villegas from Raftellus findings and process that they went through to invited her to speak on this.
Great. And then we've got I don't know if are you going to share your screen, Samantha? Or
I can. Yeah, I have it loaded. Would you like me to do that?
However,
I can. Yeah, I
yeah,
have it
whatever
loaded.
you're
Would you like me to
prepared
do
for. We don't have it pulled up in, any presentations pulled up in the chambers yet. Any presentations pulled up.
How's that?
Can we turn her volume up?
How's that?
Can we turn her volume up?
Somehow miraculously, I don't hear the echo that we. Somehow miraculously, I don't hear the echo. Give us 1 second, Samantha. We're trying to get your volume up a little bit louder in this chamber.
Okay.
Trying to get your
Okay.
volume up a little bit louder in this chamber.
Okay.
Trying to get
Okay.
your volume up a little bit louder in this chamber.
Okay. Okay.
Sure, it's just the room volume. Sure, it's just the room volume. Sure, it's just the room volume.
Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Testing, testing.
Try speaking, Samantha.
I was not, I couldn't
There
hear
we go.
anything
Try
on,
speaking, Samantha.
hello?
Great.
We got you. Can you hear us?
I can. I
We got you. Can
really
you
have
hear
only
us?
been able to hear the two aldermen when they speak directly into the microphone. I haven't really heard anything anybody else has said. Speak directly into the microphone. I haven't really heard anything
Okay,
anybody
it's
else has
because
said.
we've been having these echoing issues. We've been really limited on using our microphones. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay,
I
Great.
heard that.
can you
Yep.
hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, you can go ahead and start your presentation, Samantha.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for
you
the
can go ahead and
opportunity. This
start
has
your
been
presentation,
a great project so far. Michelle's a delight to work with. Just by way of introduction, if you weren't familiar with Revtellis, we are a national consulting firm that exclusively serves local governments. That's our space, and we serve them with a variety of management consulting services, from finance to strategic planning, organizational assessments, executive search and coaching, and of course, strategic comms and engagement. And I've been in this business for a little over 30 years. I'm located in a suburb of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. I do a lot of work in this area, but I also have done work from the West Coast on up to New England, and from Canada down to Puerto Rico. So I have probably assisted 100 communities in my career, and I bring all that experience to bear for you all on projects like this. So I was just going to briefly review the project scope that we're working on and the schedule, and then I'll walk you through the process of the audit, our findings and recommendations. So we were hired to help Brentwood assess their communications efforts and brand, and then provide a strategic communications plan. In terms of the tasks, activities that we were hired to do, the checkmarked items have been completed. So conducting a situation analysis and stakeholder mapping exercise to understand the community from the leadership staff standpoint, conducting stakeholder interviews with external members of the community, conducting benchmarks, and taking a look at your communications materials and brand and kind of really auditing them for things like design and consistency, and I'll get into that. So next on our list in the process now, we're developing the strategic comms plan and a social media plan, as well as a brand and style guidelines for Brentwood. And so we've delivered our kickoff summary notes. We delivered the research summary either this morning or yesterday. And the next two big deliverables will be that comm plan and the brand and style guide. And we began this work in October. We had a little slowdown over the holidays, which often happens. People are hard to reach. Things slow down a bit, but we picked back up in January in earnest. We've done quite a bit of work this month, and we plan to deliver everything in March, which is about a month later than we had planned. But again, working over the holidays is kind of that often happens. So it wasn't surprising to me, and Michelle's been very agreeable with the pace that we've been at. So let me talk a little bit about the audit process. I talked about engaging the staff leadership. So that was in that kickoff meeting that we had, several hours of a workshop. They were amazing. They all engaged with us. We kept them, and we asked several questions, got them involved in sort of a situation analysis, like a SWOT analysis, to understand your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, as well as communications assets. What do they think is working? What is working with process? What's not working? What does success look like? What would you like to see happen? And then we talked a bit about the different issues that y'all are kind of top of mind for not only staff but the community, and what those stakeholders for those issues may look like. And then in the next step, we sought to assess both internally and externally. So from an external standpoint, we were scoped to talk to 10 individuals outside of the town staff. So this was a real, cross section of folks in the community that we spoke to via phone. And then Michelle uploaded a sampling of materials, digital, print, all kinds of things that we then looked at with an eye for different elements, consistency, message, appropriateness, design, all of the things. The comparison that we did in Compare is a benchmark. I'll talk a little bit about that to look at you and your setup as compared to a couple of other cities that are of similar size and structure or are situated similarly. And then finally, the enhance, making recommendations to really elevate your approach. And the headline here is that y'all are doing things real well. And what, most of what we saw is either at standard practice or really approaching standard practice, mostly on par with benchmarks. And the recommendations we have are really just tweaks that are going to enhance your success going forward. So the leadership and stakeholder meeting, again, as I said, that was a kickoff workshop. And then we did conduct interviews with 10 stakeholders, again, diverse range of perspectives. Alderman Gould, I think you were one of the folks that we called. Alderman Plufka, also one of the folks that we called, as well as the library board, superintendent of schools, just a number of different folks from the community that the staff had recommended that we speak to. And the feedback we got from staff and the interviewees was very, very similar, which is good because that means you kind of really know how you're coming across and what are the challenges and what are the assets. And there's agreement there. So from the staff only, this idea that the culture within the staff organization is very collaborative, and that's great. That means that Michelle has a better, easier time of coordinating materials, coordinating information. That internal communications is good because staff has that collaborative nature. This excellent reputation that you all have, that's the city's, got a very desirable location. It's a safe community. You all are accessible as staff for questions, for information. So great reputation. Staff turned back to us with this concern of just not real formalized protocols for everything, when something needs to be communicated, what's the best way, and how. Somebody I think even mentioned, what we should be or what's legal to communicate. So, adding protocols to the plan is something that we will do for you to kind of level that up. And then finally, another takeaway was this demographic shift that the city of Brentwood is experiencing right now, right? So kind of this shifting to these younger families that are moving in and newer residents, and you've kind of got this now balance of old and new in terms of folks that have been there a long time, folks that are new to the area, folks that like things as they were, and folks that are having different expectations coming in from different places around the country, right, and settling in Brentwood. So that poses an interesting challenge that we will address in the plan as well. So for the benchmarks, we looked at the city of how do you guys say that? Des Paris? Des Paris? How do you guys say that? I don't want to butcher it. Y'all are De Pere. Okay, my bad. Thank you. De Pere. And the city of Bath, Maine. And those two were selected because population size is similar. And also we felt like there was some similarities in terms of what they were grappling with, their location, this increase in daytime residents that you also experience. So those two were selected. And some of the takeaways from these are that your staffing levels are on par with them. Bath has one full-time employee dedicated to communications. I'm sorry, Bath has a full-time and a part-time. Y'all have, Michelle, you have one full-time, although you have someone separately handling Parks and Rec. And De Pere has nobody dedicated to comms, although this is the role that the assistant city manager plays along with other duties. So if you count that, then you're kind of right on par. In terms of the communications budget, your budget is larger than the other two. De Pere is around 40 to 50 is what they told us. Bath is at 91,000. The fact that you have this, very centralized, dedicated role makes you a little bit unique to them because both Bath and De Pere rely on staff teams and consultants for city communications. I think Bath relies on a couple of different communications consultants to support them. And then finally, looking at channels used, how are they engaging with the community? What are they doing? Challenges faced, very similar across all three localities. In looking at the materials, I wanted to just share, we were looking at a variety of things, print, digital, newsletters, social, kind of everything that Michelle could dig up and share with us. And we're looking at things like consistency of message, design standards, accessibility of messaging. So when I say accessibility, I mean, are things written in a way that an 8th grade reading level could understand, right? Is it plain language? Is it terms that most people get? Or is there, some city language in there that maybe not everybody's familiar with? So we're looking at all of that. And the findings were very good use of multiple channels, in line with the benchmarks we've seen, in line with a lot of the communities of your size that we've worked with over, across the country. In most cases, design looks pretty good. We feel like this is an area that's going to get vast improvement with the brand and style guide that will increase the consistency of design and the level of design across all pieces. There is an opportunity there to enhance language accessibility. That was one thing that stood out to us. We took a few materials and checked it through Microsoft Words, Flesch Kincaid reading level assessment that you can do through the word editor. A lot of things were up, to a high school level, 10th, 11th, 12th grade level reading. So something to think about. And sometimes you can just fix that with more active oriented sentences than passives. For example, it's not all about 25-cent words, right? And then finally, opportunities to enhance the effectiveness of digital media. So we took a look at the website, web navigation, and took a look at the social media. And again, looking for the most part, like real good. And we're going to suggest some tweaks there that are going to, enhance both of those areas, social and web, and kind of, increase engagement from those standpoints. So really main recommendations that are coming out of this is to develop brand guidelines and communication standards, which we are scoped to do, and we are in the process of working on for you. And number two, a more targeted approach to community outreach and just being able to reach and engage everybody. So again, this new influx makes the job a little more challenging for Michelle because you've got folks that maybe prefer to engage with the city in ways that you haven't been doing yet. So we're going to make some recommendations for that based on what we've seen so far, what we've learned about your community, what we've seen work in other communities. And we can talk a little bit more of that. I had some thoughts about the social media discussion before too, so we can talk a little bit about that. And then finally, the adjustments, as I mentioned, to digital media. We've got some very small, but what we think will be really effective tweaks to navigation at the website, as well as the use on the social media platforms. And just another note on the first item that I forgot to mention, you know, this idea of communication standards and protocols. I didn't mention that, but like we're going to provide in the plan kind of some guidelines for staff that will help them have more comfort about what to communicate when, what's the best channel, timing, things like that. What maybe you can let go of, or what maybe you need, you know, a bigger effort for, right? So we'll provide some guidelines for that. And so, yeah, like I said, next steps were, you know, we've started work on the comp plan. Getting feedback from you all on this is really important because we want to make sure that we haven't left anything out that you were expecting to see, that there is stuff that, you know, you're in agreement with the direction we're going to go, so that the plan really answers the questions, right? Answers the mail for you. We're working on logo concepts, which will be forthcoming and once those are settled, a brand and style guide that will support that, right? And finally, just to kind of share the structure of the plan to set up expectations, we follow the four-stage process that's, you know, an industry standard blessed by the Public Relations Society of America. And what makes it strategic is this idea of research on the front end and evaluation on the back end. It's kind of a continuous loop because the plan is never done. It's just you're working it, you're adjusting, and you continue to work it and adjust it, right? So part of that research was the kickoff, where we did the SWOT analysis, the interviews that we did with the community. We talked about issues, we looked at materials, so that's our research. The planning process is what we're working on now, developing those internal processes, best practices, which we'll lay out in the plan. What are the strategies and tactics that we recommend for a community of your size, for what folks prefer based on kind of demographics, things like that? And then in most plans, we provide an implementation approach that helps you identify kind of what you're going to need to do when, resources. When we do a plan like this that's not specific to a particular topic, what we might do, and Michelle and I can talk this through, but we can set up a structure that she can follow for each topic. Some guidance on which topics to really flesh out into a strategic comm plan, or we can take one of those issues and kind of map it out for her. And then finally, evaluation will include what should you be measuring? And I found your conversation about the social really interesting because it's a very good thing that people are talking about town stuff, even if it's not on the town-owned media, right? It means you've got their attention, and they're having that conversation. I know it can be frustrating because you wanna be a part of it, but and perhaps Michelle or Bola talked about this. I couldn't hear them, but this is human behavior, right? People, you want to engage them where they are. And so maybe they're going to talk about stuff on the community Facebook, but not the Brentwood Facebook. And that's okay. Your job is to just make sure somebody knows that and is monitoring that conversation and can jump in if there's questions or misinformation that needs to be corrected. But that should be captured in some way in that you know those conversations are happening there, because then some effort in real life or through social can be made to make sure that that is a channel that you're thinking about to reach people so that they will engage, because they're going to engage where they're comfortable, right? So just a thought on that. And with that, I'll conclude, and I'm happy to answer any questions. With that, I'll conclude, and I'm happy to answer any questions. With that, I'll conclude, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I can hear you. Yep. I can hear you. Yep. I can hear you. Yep.
Everybody kind of knows each other. I think that you'll find this community is pretty tight knit. That's kind of a cliche, but I think it's really true of our community. And I think your audit really picked up on some of those elements, and I'm looking forward to a communications plan that will build on that reality. I think any communications plan for the city of Brentwood that builds on that reality is going to be in a lot better position for success. Just because I think it understands exactly how people get and pass information one to the other. And I would just echo what our chairman said too. I thought this was a really insightful and very well put together audit, and I'm really looking forward to the next steps as well.
Thank you.
Any feedback on that, Samantha? I've got a couple of questions, but
No, good to hear. Yeah. Very, very much appreciate that. And you definitely are the city of warmth. We captured that quite a bit in the conversations. We captured that quite a bit in the conversations. Captured that quite a bit in the conversations.
I'd be curious, most of them are, and all of the stakeholders, I guess, they're mostly already very engaged participants in the city. None of them on the list, I'm like, oh, that'll give me an interesting sort of balance of hearing somebody who's maybe not as engaged. In your process, do you typically have highly engaged stakeholders, or would it be better to have had a few that maybe aren't as engaged?
Yeah. Great question. Appreciate you asking it. And this happens a lot, right? Because when we ask a client for, 10 to 15 names of people that we should talk to, what we're asking for are essentially influencers, people who know something about the community and they have a pulse on whatever their kind of area of expertise is. If they're an environmentalist or a social issues activist, they kind of know their community and they can speak for them. And so you're right. By doing that, you get a little bit of a skewed of people who are engaged and know a little bit more. But they're proxies, right? We're trying to get some sense of how the community feels about you and how they feel about communication and how they feel communicated to. This tool of these interviews with influencers tends to render us pretty accurate sense of the community. Now, we're scoped right now with a very large county in Maryland, where we're doing an audit, and it's much more extensive. We're getting ready to do a public survey and focus groups in the public sphere, and 15 interviews. It's a much bigger from a square footage and a population standpoint. Those will be more data points to kind of check against what the influencers say. So we do that stuff sometimes, but for what we were scoped for, this is a snapshot.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with anything that was in the report and audit. I'm wondering, did we hear what we want to hear in some things? I don't know, Michelle, what do you?
I will say that we had a robust list. There were people who didn't respond, didn't want to participate. I think we probably ended up with the list of people that we did because those are the people willing to participate in something like this.
Understood.
When you get to that lower level of community involvement, those are the people who are less likely to respond, answer the phone for a stranger for all intents and purposes. People nowadays don't answer a number they don't know.
Right.
And so I think that's probably a big reason we ended up with the list that we did. Also because these are names when the group of staff members that were kind of those stakeholders were meeting and discussing potential people to include as these influencer interviews. The names of people that are coming up, the names that are known, the contact information that was known are people who are generally more involved in the community. So
No, and I think you're right, Samantha, in that, they act as proxies or influencers that maybe also have a sense of how
They have a sense.
people around them might be feeling, even if they're not the ones participating in the survey.
and we did really try to focus on making sure we were gathering a diverse group in terms of age, in terms of areas of involvement within the community, in terms of gender, things like that.
Great.
If you do want, Chairman, if you do want kind of more feedback from a sampling of disinterested, meaning they don't kind of care one way or the other, but you'll get honest opinions, that would be something you might do through a public survey.
Okay.
And we can provide some guidance to Michelle on how she might execute that.
Yeah, not a bad idea. So thank you for that. That's good. I found it interesting. I didn't even know that we had parks guidelines, marketing guidelines, until I saw the report and clicked the link. I'm like, oh, that's be good to have some continuity there, and it had a lot of good information there. On the benchmark city, I was surprised at the city in Maine. It was a surprising selection. And we tend to, Samantha, for your benefit, I'd say we tend to punch above our weight a little bit as a city, even though we seem kind of small, 8,000, residents. We're doing big things, and we're pretty involved. So I was curious from an aspirational, were there other local or near our region, not in Maine, that we looked at?
We purposely looked outside of our region.
Okay.
We had to pair as our local comparator, and then at direction from Samantha, we looked at other cities. There was a city, I'm drawing a blank on it right now, that we reached out to that didn't respond, right, Samantha? That was
Yeah.
more Midwest. But we were really focused on cities with comparable population sizes that had kind of big retail spaces, and really their daytime population grew like ours does. And that was how we landed. I mean, it was based on my research,
Sure.
and that's how we landed on Maine.
Okay, yeah, and I found that interesting, the idea of the influx of our population and the impact of of our services that requires, daytime. I never really thought about it that way, but, um, the next parts of my questions or comments, as it relates to YouTube, I saw some of the recommendations of potentially, archiving or removing old content. The only thing that I do agree with, compartmentalizing and maybe organizing it better. I don't know that I would get rid of meetings, just because to me, those are, even for, um, history, history of elected officials, I go back all the time to meetings that are, you know, prior to me being on the board. And as the board changes, I think having a place for those, for the public to be able to see and go back to is important.
Multiple times where I've had Kelly go back to meetings from back when I first started, just trying to capture the concept or the discussion that the board had at that time so that we can use it to develop reports. So maybe a different location, but definitely not get rid of it.
Yeah.
I think the archiving will go a long way to helping people find what they want faster as well. So I'm hearing your direction, and we'll make some suggestions for that are a little more specific in the plan.
And then, from a messaging standpoint, I did find your analysis, interesting as it related to writing to accessibility for maybe a younger reading level. In the communications audit, or I'm sorry, in the final communications plan, are there going to be, audience personas that are developed, and how to message to them appropriately? There was a little bit of touching on that, I think, in the audit.
More general than that, not
Okay.
personas. Yeah. We pay attention to, I think it's the American Literacy Council who sets kind of what they think the standard is for reading level. And the last time I checked, it was 8th grade. So that's the standard that we aim for. It's really easy to exceed that. Um, and there may be some topics where you can get away with exceeding it because who's attracted to that topic would not be everybody in your community. So, giving thought to, when you're speaking broadly to everybody, trying to reach that 8th grade level. And then when you've got maybe a subset of your community that's further engaged, maybe it's, developers or whoever who would have some knowledge of engineering because you're talking about an engineering project or something like that, you can maybe get away with that high school level. But it's more broad. It's going to be more broad recommendations.
So then that's something internally we can look at. How do we kind of refine that for the folks that we communicate to?
That was a completely new concept that I learned about in reading the audit. I had never, when I create messaging, I am writing to attract readers, and I never really thought about the reading level. So that was a really interesting note that, I learned something new, and it's really made me think when I'm creating these posts.
Yeah, and Michelle, if you ever get to a situation where you're needing to translate more stuff, the plainer the language, the simpler the language, the closer you get to that 8th grade, the more accurate that translation becomes too, and the better that translation becomes. So there's all kinds of reasons to strive for that.
Great. I definitely agree that the website usability is a big issue. In your experience, I noticed the comparator or the benchmark cities, well, we don't know who operates mains, but they're on the same, De Pere's is using the same host as us. Do you feel like the usability is limited because of our current host, or is limited because it's only given us certain themes and structures to work within, or is that, I'm just curious in your experience with working with other cities.
Yeah, I mean, I want Michelle to weigh in because we typically aren't working in the Civic Plus or whatever the tools are, but typically those structures are really locked down. The style sheets are locked down. What you're able to do is locked down from a design standpoint. We have lots of clients for special projects that will create an offshoot page that if they need more freedom in the design to attract folks and really dive deeper or collect feedback, they'll do a one-off.
Like landing pages.
A special page, for that. But what we saw is not uncommon. And again, minor tweaks. In your case, I think it was, I'm from memory, but I think it was navigation. There's just a little bit too many choices. Potentially, I'll have to talk to Gretchen, but again, more than 30 links on the home page and just maybe providing some tweaks to the structure to help people get where they want to go faster.
Yeah, that's all feedback that I have heard since I started here, and it's an uphill battle to kind of address that. Over time, I am trying to, things live in multiple places on the website, so trying to really pare that down. You know, so Civic Plus, I think, can be a really great tool. It's just kind of finding your groove in terms of working within it. I've worked on, had calls with Civic Plus and had some really helpful people that have helped me achieve like specific projects that I've needed to kind of accomplish there. So they've been really responsive to that. So I think with the tips that are in, that Samantha and Gretchen are able to kind of offer in terms of how to really organize it and kind of work within the structure that we have, I think that'll be really helpful.
Just for, kind of a different way to look at it. Some of our clients have used Granicus as opposed to Civic Plus for their site. And the one that folks love, and we hear it from, I've heard it from a couple of different clients, is Kalamazoo, Michigan, if you wanted to look at how they've structured their site. It's pretty clean. But again, different. It's not Civic Plus, but there may be opportunities there to model some of what they do there. And typically when folks are building their site, they're building it from the structure of the organization, from your staff's perspective, as opposed to a resident's perspective. What is a resident coming in to do? And so that shift in mindset has big implications for how the navigation and the design is done.
Agree 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had some, I've looked into some of the other potential. That's why, just from a long-term planning, it's not obviously something we can only work with what we have now. But there may be certain recommendations that come out of this audit and communications plan that then maybe requires some other tools that we don't have currently on the table. The last thing I had was, I'd love to get a little bit more clarity when we talk about the brand guidelines, logo development, and how, what would be included in the guidelines themselves, beyond just the logos, the fonts, the colors.
Yep. Yep. And I think I shared a sample with Michelle in the RFP process. Because we've done this for ourselves, for Raptellis, and we've done this for clients. But in addition to sort of what's the typeface family, what's the color palette, how are you allowed to use the logo, how not to use the logo? Those are all standard pieces. We'll provide some instructions for templating so that when Michelle or a consultant goes to design something, there's a way that you're going to do a newsletter. There's a way that you're going to lay out a fact sheet, right? And so that it continues to build that brand and that recognition folks will have. The other piece of it is, what is the brand, not the logo, but the brand of the city? What's the feeling that you want people to come away with after interacting with you? What's the voice of the city so that when you go to write messaging, you're being mindful of what that voice is? And so though that's part of it, you know, so that when people, and this is an internal doc, so when staff take a look at this and they see, this is what we're trying to convey, this is what we're about, this is what we want people to feel, this is what we want them to experience when they interact with staff, that's a part of the content that'll be in there. And then we've got a pretty comprehensive writing style guide that we have used that gives some guidance on, you know, everything from basic grammar, when you have choices, what choice to make and why. Words people often get wrong, words we're not supposed to use anymore, words and phrases we don't use, bias-free language, things like that. We can provide that as well because we've done it before. So if that's something, Michelle, y'all want us to include in that, that's not a heavy lift for us to include in that as well.
I mean, I think personally that would be a really helpful tool to have.
Yeah, I think a lot of those are good, and you know, I just want to also make sure that we're some of the. I just want to make sure that when we talk about the brand and the logo, you know, what we're hoping to or open to see. I think there's some things, you know, we've got. Let's face it, we've got a logo that is pretty dated and has a lot of visual clutter. It does not scale. You can't put it real small. You can't put it on a banner and have it be legible. I mean, there's a lot of things that just make it feel like it's not the progressive. You know, when I say progressive, I mean a city that has done a lot of big things, and we've taken on a lot of big, you know, issues as it relates to transforming the city and sort of really making this a great place to live. Definitely want to make sure that we have graphic, visual language that reflects, I think, what you saw in some of the reporting of this is a city that's sort of got the old heritage of people that have lived here for generations, like Alderman Plufka talked about, but you got an influx of a lot of younger, you know, families that have come in. So, you know, how do we bridge those two to make sure that we're still this modern, you know, progressing city, and a good place for people to come and live and have their business, while honoring the heritage. I'm interested to see what you're going to come up with, and you know, things like applying it to even wayfinding signage around the city or banners. You know, that's important, because that is kind of what people see a lot of times when they come into our city, and so and it's one that our current logo is just incredibly limited.
Do you have any other questions for Samantha?
I don't think so.
Do you have any other questions for Samantha? Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us tonight, Samantha.
It's been my pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you all in person to deliver the plan.
Thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
Okay. Moving on to new business, there is no new business. Citizen comments. We have a citizen in the. You want to? Yeah. Is that one on or off? Yeah.
Hang on.
Yeah,
No.
come grab it.
So no problem. Okay, I'm Lois Truman, 8710 Rosalie Avenue. I was interested and I know we're over time, sorry. I was interested in this conversation particularly because somebody asked me when the next recycle of paper, shredding, and electronics. So I just hopped right on the website. Have you guys looked at the website?
I have, yes.
Have you seen there's no date for the upcoming months on these things? I mean, you could jump on the website real fast if you want to and look up. If you were John Q. Public, going to the website and looking up, and I see the one for January and February, and that's it. Then we go to all the way back to 2017. We can go every year back. And so something is wrong with that. And so if we want people to go to this and access this, and this would be the go-to spot, and I got there very easily. The problem is when I got there, there was no information that I needed. So in plain English, we need to fix that.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And that's just one area, and we need to look all through. And I want to thank Michelle and everybody that's worked hard on getting this audit and this done, because this is the voice of our community. I mean, when you talk about how do we communicate, you can shoot yourself in the foot real fast if you don't have it together. So I appreciate that. And the other thing about the social media, I am on social media morning, noon, and night. Anybody knows that. And I am confused about it. I can't get a handle on how we're really supposed to be doing social media for the city. I know the city's official page. I know Ann's unofficial page, which is where most of the transactions take place. And I don't know how we can direct people better, but that's what needs to happen, in my opinion, to the purest, horse's mouth source than sometimes these bits and pieces that we get out there. And some of that's the nature of the beast, I understand. But I don't feel a strong enough, hear ye, this is Brentwood speaking, and this is what we're telling you. I'm not plugged into that, wherever that is. So you can help me with that or whatever, or I can help or whatever needs to happen. But I feel like that some of our misinformation in our community is just like you were saying, people asking when's recycle this week, when's trash pickup, for what, even though that has been very clearly printed and put out on. But then I did go to the website and I thought, oh dear, this is not saying that. So, all right. Now, the other thing I want to say, I've got everything. Is I am on the school communications board, committee, whatever. And I would like to be a resident on the communications committee. I'm interested in that. I don't know if you're scared to have me on it or not, but I want to be on it. I will make that clear, that I would like to be a member of that.
We'll print for you the volunteer sheet before you leave tonight.
Thank you. Because I have, I really want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem here. So
Thank you very
that's,
much.
those are my, and thank you for letting me go over my 3 minutes. Oh, let's see, this goes here. Thank you for letting me go over my 3 minutes.
Thank you, Lois, and those are the reasons we have this committee, is to continue to evolve and refine and get better at that. And the website, I know we have all had the challenge with that, so appreciate you pointing out the deficiency there.
Just for reference, there is an electronics recycling event this weekend.
Yes, March the 1st.
Correct.
The printed, that's usually what
Good. Okay. Any other comments?
None.
Thoughts? All right, seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned.